This is a presentation on the role of the research question and the research hypothesis in postgraduate study, and how you as a supervisor may support your students to develop suitable research questions and research hypotheses. I'm Vaughan John from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and I've been a facilitator on the SPS course for a number of years now. So why are we considering research questions and research hypotheses in a course on supervision? With the focus on supervision in this course, there is little emphasis on the methodological aspects of postgraduate study. And part of the reason for this is because we often have participants from different disciplines in this course, and the very form and function of research, as we know, differs across those disciplines. Including the use of research questions and research hypotheses. There are a number of useful resources that you'll find on methodology on the SPSS course website, and of course on various sites on the internet. So this session just briefly touches on the initial stages of postgraduate research and your role in supervising the development of a research question or a research hypothesis. So which do you use, the research question or the research hypothesis? Perhaps you use both. The research question, asks a question that the study would seek to answer, while the hypothesis proposes an explanation or a relationship that the study seeks to prove or disprove. If you are needing to help your student to decide between the use of a research question and an hypothesis, and often these decisions are made because of your disciplinary location and the way you've done your research. But you could ask your students these questions. Does the study take on an experimental approach in the inquiry? Is the student making an explicit prediction about the phenomenon that is being studied? And if the answers to these questions is yes, then the student will most likely need an hypothesis. But if the answer is no, then you should be directing your student towards the development of a research question. And this is because a hypothesis is a tentative statement predicting a particular relationship between two or more variables, which that study then sets out to prove or disprove. So what do research questions do? Key role of a research question and the hypothesis is that it provides focus. It allows you to narrow the interest. It has implications for the methodology. The research question will delimit the methodological approach. Methodology, often we talk about a fit for purpose, so certain methodologies suit particular questions better. The research question also indicates the population and possibly the sample that will be involved in the study, so this has implications for data collection. They also delimit the analytical approach, the kinds of theoretical lens that may be used in the study, kind of emerges from the questions that are being asked. Another key role is that in the early stages of conceptualization and design of a study is that the research question will help provide some focus and narrowing down of a literature review, which is very important for students given the amount of literature that is available today. So we talk about the research question as providing this golden thread for the study. It's linking many different decisions and parts and components of a study and decisions that the researcher has to make. So because of this kind of impact that it has on the overall design of the study, it's quite crucial to get this right, which means that a fair amount of time has to be spent in developing research questions, and this has implications for you as a supervisor in guiding that early stage. So how do we guide these students into a narrow focus? Our students often come to us with very broad ideas of what they want to do from their practice or what they've read, and then often we have to spend a fair amount of time as supervisors helping them to achieve a narrow focus through the development of a research question. Okay, so this is about helping the student to identify the boundaries of their topic and getting them to formulate a question that allows them to take a specific focus within that broad area. And so both the research question and the hypothesis is the key kind of process in the early stages of research design, where we help the students to get this focus, and by setting up research questions or an hypothesis, other areas in that broad area are closed off. Here's an example of how one may help a student move from their broad area of interest to a research question with a narrow focus. So this is an example from disability and education, or the area of inclusion, if you like, and the student may come with a statement like wanting to learn more, or to do some research around barriers and learning strategies of high achieving learners with disabilities. Sometimes this may be expressed even more broadly, almost in the form of a title for a newspaper article, like Success Despite Disability. And through some discussion and engagement to the student, that interest, that broad interest, could be narrowed down into a question such as what factors influence high achievement amongst learners with visual disabilities. And you can see here the narrowing down is both in terms of looking at what factors influence achievement, but also there's a narrowing down in terms of not the full range of different forms of disability, but taking a specific focus with learners who may have visual disabilities. Minister Naledi Pandor last year was reflecting on her PhD journey, and the Mail and Guardian carried an article on her reflections, which you will find at the link at the bottom right of the slide. But a key statement that she made, which encapsulates what we've been talking about the role of the research questions, the kinds of difficulties that are involved in them, but also the importance of supervisors guiding students in getting this right, was in this statement that she said, one of the most challenging tasks in her journey was deciding on the research questions. She said, one needs to give careful thought to these because they play a critical role in shaping your research work and influence the content and shape of your thesis. They are not easy to draft as a set of interview questions, or what we call field questions. They are a substantive reflection of that which you plan to investigate. So I think this is really useful in kind of indicating the importance and the need to spend some time with this. We say that words are important and that each word in the research question needs to be carefully constructed and weighed. Okay, so for instance, spend some time thinking about these 4 questions. Can you see how the way in which they are phrased leads to very different lines of inquiry about IT and the learning area of geography? There are studies here which deal with students' perceptions. There are studies which deal with the kinds of discourses within that field. And some of those studies that are prompted by these questions looks at the impact of IT in terms of learning and geography. So quite different studies arise based on how a research question is framed, and that is why it's important that a lot of time is spent in looking at the implications of these. A research question should be about one issue. It should be clear and concise, must address an important, controversial or unresolved issue, and often the literature review kind of guides what those issues are. It also needs to be feasible to undertake such a study or to respond or pursue such a question within the specified timeframes of the study. And we know with master's studies, these can be quite limited. So we talk about the feasibility of the question. And they need to be adequately resourced, which is also about feasibility. So we're talking about the research questions leading to studies that are doable, interesting, possible, and relevant in that they can make a contribution. If you are using sub-questions, if those are necessary, then these sub-questions should unpack the main question in detail. Sub-questions unpack, they don't add extra bits to the study. So all research questions must provide a single golden thread for one study and not a few threads for unrelated studies. So this is quite important if you are using sub-questions, that they don't take the student off into a new line of inquiry. Here's an example of research questions and sub-questions that may contribute to it. So the same question that we looked at in an earlier slide, what factors influence high achievement amongst learners with visual disabilities? Sub-questions could be such as, what are the key challenges faced by learners with visual disabilities? How have these learners overcome such challenges? And what were the specific learning strategies of learners with visual disabilities? So one could see that a set of sub-questions like this cumulatively will provide a response to the main research question. And that's the kind of test of sub-questions, is that they should be contributing to the main question. So what can a supervisor do to help students narrow her focus and develop a suitable research question or a hypothesis? It's important for a student to understand that a fair amount of work goes into developing a research question or hypothesis. This is not something that they would get right the first or second time. So there's going to be several drafts, and they need to be patient working with that. They need to keep reading and discussing the implications of what they have read for their study, and the literature review often shapes the final set of research questions. They need to be thinking about the methodological implications of their draft questions, and that raises the issues about how feasible it is to gain access to sources of data and to the other kinds of methodological implications for those questions. Very critically, they need to be getting feedback from others. This may be peers in their class, their colleagues, but more often feedback from the supervisor is very critical in getting the research questions and the hypothesis correctly framed. And as a supervisor, I think one needs to set a deadline for this, because students can sometimes spend a long time in their broad field, the broad area of interest, and they need to commit to a narrow question. Because that allows them to then move forward into other steps in the research journey, like literature reviews and methodology and so forth. So in conclusion, an activity to wrap up this session, if you could work in groups, and if there's some disciplinary mix that may allow you to then each express one broad topic of area in your discipline. And then after everyone's had a chance, if you could select one of these broad topics to work on as a group. And the task is to develop 4 possible research questions or hypotheses for that topic that your group has selected. Once you've done that, you may also discuss whether it should be a research question or a hypothesis, and why that may be the case for what you've developed for that particular topic. I hope you found this useful, and I wish you luck with your supervision of research questions and hypotheses.